Good day, listeners. You've tuned in to More Than a Funeral, Voices of the Red River Valley, powered by Corsmo Funeral and Cremation Service right here in Moorhead, Minnesota. My name is Tom, and I'm going to be your host today. And whether you are listening on your computer, maybe your phone, car, any other kind of device, and possibly even your tractor or combine, we welcome you here to today's episode. We all know there are so many funeral-related podcasts of interest dealing with so many various issues, but our focus is going to be on the personal aspect of relationships and the multitude of interesting people and organizations that like to call the Red River Valley their home. And on occasion, we might push the edge a little bit, discuss some of those controversial issues. We all know what we're talking about. Red Jell-O. Is it appropriate to serve at church potlucks anymore, or is it a taboo subject? And there's so many other things such as hot dish, casserole. What's the difference between the two anyway? So, we invite you to sit back for a few minutes, grab yourself a blistering hot cup of Lutheran Church coffee, and enjoy the conversation. We are glad you stopped by to listen. Good afternoon, listeners. You are tuned into episode number 5 of More Than a Funeral, Voices of the Red River Valley. And today I have the privilege of sitting down with Maggie Ness, the executive director, as she's called, of Memory Cafe in Fargo, technically, but in the Fargo-Moorhead area for the most part. But as we're recording this on February 20th, 2025, we are just experiencing a heat wave outside. It's about 15 degrees, I think, above. And so we're excited to be outside, excited to be inside. Again, just having a great conversation. But we're here with, like I said, Maggie Ness, Executive Director of Memory Cafe. So welcome, Maggie. Thank you for coming as we're learning about our podcasting and making mistakes and just having fun doing it. So,
well, thank you for inviting me to be on this podcast. I'm grateful to be here.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure to meet Maggie about 3 or 4 days ago. I was over at their office. We were talking about a separate conference coming up in the future, so we're not complete strangers, but pretty close. But anyway, let me just begin by asking, first off, what is Memory Cafe? I know what it says on the website. But in your words, can you tell me what Memory Cafe is, why it came to be, kind of the impetus behind it, and how it came to be? And just kind of give me your side of the story to see if it jives with what's on the website.
Sounds great. I would be happy to. So Memory Cafe, I think I'll start with just the Memory Cafe concept. Memory cafes were started years ago by a Dutch psychologist who was noticing that people impacted by memory loss, whether they are living with memory loss or caring for someone living with memory loss, were becoming isolated and weren't having opportunities to not only socialize and be with others, but also to learn more about this diagnosis. And so he founded the first Memory Cafe that was really to encourage people to be out and socializing with this diagnosis. Because, like I said, not only people living with dementia, but also their caregivers were becoming very isolated on this journey. And there's lots of benefits to socialization with the brain, whether it's, the benefits to mental health, but also the changes that are happening, with communication to people living with dementia. And so he started this Memory Cafe concept in the Netherlands, and it really took off from there. So there are memory cafes all across the world, in the United States, and here in Minnesota, North Dakota. But Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley was co-founded in 2017. And we're a little bit unique, or every memory cafe is unique to their own programs and services. Most memory cafes are meeting once a month, and they focus on that socialization, education, as well as just getting people out in community in a safe and supportive, welcoming environment. Mm-hmm. But Memory Cafe of the Red River Valley was co-founded by Deb Call and Beth Ustanko, and both of them were personally impacted by memory loss, different types of dementia in their families, and they were noticing that their families were becoming isolated with this diagnosis, whether it was because people who were really close to them weren't reaching out as much as they once did, and they were just noticing that devastating impact of not having that circle, that support around them along this journey. And so Deb Call actually went over, I believe, to the Alzheimer's Association, which was my old coworker, and asked, why don't we have a memory cafe here in our community? Could the Alzheimer's Association start one? And unfortunately, they didn't have the capacity to do so. And so my old coworker, Kendra, actually went back to Deb and said, why don't you start one? And so she did. And I am incredibly grateful that she did, because it's just really taken off since 2017, and the support that's provided at Memory Cafe and the education and the learning opportunities that people have here in our community is incredible through the Memory Cafe.
So with my limited knowledge, which is why you're here, is to educate me and all of our listeners, the multitude of listeners, it's not a franchise, is it? I mean, but it's patterned after others.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so it's not a franchise. There's no oversight through memory cafes. There's no funding sources to run a memory cafe. So we're a nonprofit organization. Everything that we raise goes right into our free programs and resources. There is a memory cafe directory where if you are listening and you are not in the Fargo-Moorhead community and you're not able to travel here, you can go into that directory and try and find a memory cafe in your community.
Gotcha. Because surprisingly, we do have, based on the stats that I see coming into this podcast, we have listeners probably in about a dozen states already. And, So it's people who know people who know people.
Yep.
One thing I noticed as I look, think about and talk about the vision about Memory Cafe, the biggest word that stands out to me is support. Mm-hmm. And obviously you are there to assist people with the memory loss, if that's the right word of saying, one of the many words of saying it, but also support for the caregivers. Mm-hmm. And that is huge. I know from personal experience, I'm a caregiver. And so I can relate to what you just said about not really being ostracized or shunned, but people don't know really how to react or how to handle that when they recognize it. It's kind of like coming into contact with somebody with a hearing disability, hearing loss. All they do is shout louder. Not quite the right way of doing it. So support to me is what really jumps out at me. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that. We'll talk in a moment a little bit about some of the programs and support groups, but I guess your view on the support and how important that is in the whole equation of Memory Cafe.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so many topics I'd love to talk about just on this.
We have an hour. No.
I think what's really been neat for me to see since joining Memory Cafe this past year, or over a year ago, I should say, is just the caregivers being able to walk into Memory Cafe with their loved one who's experiencing these changes to their brain, and knowing that the person that they're with, as well as themselves, are going to feel really welcomed and supported once they walk through the doors. That people understand, and we get this comment often from new people that will come, is that our volunteers are well equipped to really support each of them on this journey. And they understand that, there might be changes to communication, whether the person that they're caring for isn't able to find the right word, or maybe it's an inappropriate word, but they know that it's because there's changes happening in the brain, and they accept that, and they're going to continue to engage with them in conversation, because it is really hard to bring someone who's living with memory loss at times into public settings because of that fear. I just think that's really neat to see at Memory Cafe. But yes, caregivers are absolutely incredible. There's a lot going on when you're a caregiver, whether it's, trying to figure out, the changes that are happening and how to adapt to those changes. But it's also, the unknown of how this disease is going to progress. Doctors aren't able to tell you exactly how it's going to progress, what changes are going to occur, how severe those changes will be. And so caregivers are dealing with a lot of emotions on this journey, and we need to support those, and we need to acknowledge those emotions and normalize them. And I think that's what the neat part of the support groups is that they have a safe space to share those emotions that they're feeling, the fears that they're feeling, the anxieties, and to know that they're not alone in those either.
You touch on some great points there, and I know that caregivers always, and maybe it's an upper Midwest thing, but caregivers always think, I'm the best person to provide this care. Nobody can provide the care as good as I can.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that. But yet there comes a point where exhaustion sets in.
Absolutely.
And even for some people, physical ailments start to come into play, and emotional things like that too. But you are right. When it's an awkward situation, people don't really know how to respond. You had mentioned earlier talking about, the dementia. And you had told me earlier that you'd like to talk a little bit about what is dementia in your eyes, and are there people with other forms of memory loss? Yes, as a layperson, I hear about Alzheimer's, I hear about dementia, and I know they're probably all connected to some extent, but there are probably some things that will diagnose something specifically dementia. So yeah, just the floor is yours. The table's yours. Just tell me a little bit about that.
So I think anytime I or anyone can provide education on the topic of dementia, I think it's important because a lot of people have questions about it. What is dementia? What is Alzheimer's disease? Is usually the question I get a lot, because these terms are used intertwined together. And so I guess the best way I've been described, what dementia is dementia is really a general term that's used to describe the changes in cognitive functioning that's affecting a person's day-to-day life.
Kind of the umbrella.
It's the umbrella term. Yep. Okay. So just like cancer is an umbrella term, developmental disabilities, that's an umbrella term, because there's different types of cancers under the umbrella. And so that's the same with dementia. There's many different types of dementia that someone could be experiencing or diagnosed with. Alzheimer's disease is that most common type of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is accounted for about 60 to 80% of dementia diagnoses. And so that's why we hear dementia and Alzheimer's used together. But there's also many other types of dementia, such as vascular dementia. That's a dementia that my great aunt lived with, and that typically occurs if someone has had like a major stroke to the brain or multiple mini strokes to the brain, reducing that blood flow. And it can be a more slower progression of dementia. So that's another type. There's also dementia with Lewy bodies. Dementia with Lewy bodies can look kind of like Parkinson's at times, where they may have tremors in their hands, or they may, when they're walking, have like a shuffled gait in their walk. Right. They might also have hallucinations, which I always try to educate caregivers on, because that could be really scary for the caregiver if you hear your loved one having a hallucination. And what's interesting is typically the hallucinations are not scary for the individual living with Lewy body dementia. It's more so, looking out a window and seeing maybe kids playing at the park, or a dog walking by. Maybe even voices. Okay. Yep. But that becomes scary for the caregiver if they were not aware that could happen. And also, how do we respond to that? So I think education is really important. The list goes on and on. There's frontotemporal dementia. There's many different types of dementia. So I think the more we can educate on, the different types and what symptoms may occur based on the type of dementia someone's living with, it can really help us on the journey. And so, not just stopping with the dementia diagnosis is basically what I'm getting at. Gotcha.
Years ago, being in my middle 60s, I hate to admit it, but many years ago, when somebody had dementia or something like this, we would just say they're what was a cliche or a term we often use, like they're getting senile. That was just a phrase that we labeled people with, and unfortunately, it's not good anymore to say, they're just going senile. Or, aunt, she's just going loony. We have ways of coping, and that unfortunately some of them. Yeah. But are you seeing, I guess, veterans, I'll just kind of solo or not pick on veterans, but just isolate veterans with PTSD, even law enforcement, people in traumatic situations. Are you finding, that segment of society, obviously they would need assistance too. There's dementia in its bigger form, doesn't play favorites.
It doesn't. Yeah, no, it absolutely doesn't. I'm not an expert when it comes to the veterans and the diagnoses that they're experiencing after their service. Right. But I know that can play a big impact on it, especially with PTSD. Brain injuries, definitely, that puts you at a higher risk of developing a type of dementia.
Okay.
And so, it doesn't discriminate. I mean, we see people who are highly intelligent individuals that are living with a type of dementia. And so, any way we can reduce stigma of this as well, I think is really important.
Okay. You talk about, hearing voices or seeing things. Out on social media, of course, there's a very famous little video clip about a real aged ballerina who, sitting in a wheelchair, and all of a sudden they play the song that she used to dance to, and all of a sudden her hands start to move and her mouth kind of starts to mouth possibly some of the lyrics. And so memory loss is vicious. I mean, it's mean. It takes something from people. That's so important. And to be a caregiver or family, to see that go is really quite frustrating. And so what Memory Cafe does is, again, I always go back to that support. It tells them, we're here for you. You're not alone. And that, again, to me is very important.
Yeah.
You've got some great programs. Before I just kind of move on, were there some other things that, I might have cut you off on that you want to talk about in that respect before we talk about programs and activities?
Yeah, well, I love your comment on that. And that the lady that you're talking about, I think she was a Swan Lake potentially ballerina. And it's a beautiful video that we've definitely seen. And it really supports what we talk about at Memory Cafe, is that we really want to change the way we think about and support memory loss. Many people, there's still that stigma out there. And we want to reduce that stigma to really make people feel encouraged with this diagnosis. We serve people who are living with early stage symptoms of their memory loss, whether it's Alzheimer's disease or, long-term effects from COVID, even young onset dementia. And we want to really encourage them that, yes, we have this diagnosis, but we can still live independently and we can live well with this. And we do that through the programs that we offer at Memory Cafe to encourage people to be out and to talk about this diagnosis and to meet with others and to really, how are you navigating these changes with your short-term memory and maybe not being able to find the right words, like what's been helpful for you, and let's talk about it and let's find some strategies that help. But also for people who have, progressed more into this diagnosis, such as, the lady you're mentioning in that video is, what are things that are important to her? And clearly music, ballet was important to her. And so the fact that they were able to engage her through playing that music and, she may not have been engaging in conversation much at that point, but you turn on that music and she's able to beautifully be engaged and really just have a wonderful moment of just what sparks her and what's special to her.
Special to her, but also if her family was there, just to have that flash of brilliance or youth that she once had.
Yeah,
absolutely. Maybe tell me a little bit about, the dementia and how it can, I hate to say it this way, but come and go. It's probably not a point A to point B. This is your diagnosis, and this is where you will be in 10 years or 5 years. But there are some individuals that probably it's very quick, much progresses more rapidly, and some are, gets to a certain point and kind of stops. But is there anything that you can touch on about that?
That's a good question. I was told that if you've seen one person living with Alzheimer's, you've seen one person living with Alzheimer's.
There you go.
Same thing. If you've seen one person living with dementia, same thing. It affects everyone in their own unique way. And so that's why it's really hard to tell someone this is exactly how your road is going to look, because we can't. And each of our brain networks is unique, and each, the way that whatever type of dementia someone is impacted with, it's going to impact them in their own way. And so it is very hard to say, how the progression will look. But, the more that we can, be aware of the changes that are happening and support someone based on those changes can really help their journey.
Good. I think it's important to note, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but your job, quote unquote, your ministry, your calling is not to change it or correct it, but to support.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got some great programs, and I have to laugh. Some of them we talked about a moment ago, but I watched a great video on the news with Kevin Wallaman.
Yeah,
who did
yeah.
something talking about over at Bethel Church. You do a Monday morning exercise with Jake, is it?
Yeah,
Coach Jake?
Coach Jake,
Yeah.
from CrossFit Fargo.
Right, yeah. Thankfully, I think I read a bit about it. It's only like 15 minutes long, isn't it?
A little bit longer.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, around probably 25 minutes we shoot for.
Cut me off at 15, but no, tell me a little bit
I'm
about
usually
some,
ready to be done after 15.
well, some of those chair exercises look great, but sure, the morning exercise, and then I know in the afternoons on Mondays it looks like you have, and occasionally you've gone to a VFW or a Legion post where you have dancing and music and things like that too. So I'll be quiet and tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we'll start with Monday mornings. So we have a weekly program Monday morning where we're at Bethel Church in Fargo, and it's just a really great way to start your week.
Monday especially.
Mondays used to not be my favorite day of the week, but now they definitely are.
Do they provide coffee?
We provide lots of coffee,
Okay,
and we have delicious treats. So we start with exercise. Coach Jake leads us in exercise from 9 to 9:30, and I will say it's a pretty intense exercise. We're doing a lot of chair push-ups, squats, circuit workouts because he is a CrossFit coach.
Sure.
And he really is focusing on, how can we reduce our fall risk too? So really strengthening our legs, and he teaches us lots of things based on that.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and then he also always comes with a really motivational message. So we have a really good time in exercise. We're cheering each other on because it is a hard exercise. But we also know that we're going to get some coffee and treats afterwards.
Sounds like a Pavlov experiment here.
Yeah.
Oh, ring that bell. Okay.
Oh, funny. So after exercise, then we go downstairs at Bethel Church in Fargo. If you are familiar with Bethel, there's about 5 rooms down there, and we fill those rooms. So we have a variety of groups that meet, and they're small groups. So to kind of start as we're heading downstairs at Bethel, we have a group we call the Gathering.
So like smaller groups after the larger exercise.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so exercise, everyone's together, and then we go into smaller groups. So one of the groups is called the Gathering, and that's for people who are in their early stages of their diagnosis or have been recently diagnosed with any type of memory loss. So it could be Alzheimer's disease, it could be the various types that I talked about earlier, but it could also be something else. It could be, like I said, long-term effects from COVID.
Oh, yeah.
It could be they maybe had a stroke and are now experiencing memory loss. It could also be a heart attack, and now we're experiencing changes with memory loss. And so this is a group really to talk about it and to support each other. Right. It's a very safe, supportive, welcoming group to ask any of those questions. So they are guided through a book that there's different articles from people who are living with memory loss who have written these articles, and then there's kind of some discussion questions that guide conversations. But of course, if people come with topics that they'd like to address, they're going to have time for that too.
Right.
So that's one group. We also have 2 caregiver groups that meet. And so we have a men's group for men caregivers. Majority are spouses, but there's also some children of a parent who's living with memory loss that join that group. And then we also have a ladies group, and same thing. Typically spouses, but also some children that join. And at the same time those groups meet, we also have like a respite opportunity, because we know as this disease progresses, there may be a point where you don't feel comfortable leaving your loved one at home, or they're not safe to be alone.
Yeah, good point.
And so we have a men's and a ladies group where we do coffee and conversations. We have a really natural environment to just be with others and to socialize, have a really good time. And then we also have some really meaningful and purposeful activities because we really want to continue to engage those who are living with memory loss in these purposeful and meaningful activities.
Let me back up. That conversation you talked about respite care, I think, I bet those conversations can go just about anywhere.
Yeah,
talking about sports or quilting or grandkids. I bet you kind of have to keep some people on task.
Yeah.
But you got to let them go because that's why they're there.
Absolutely.
Not following guidelines.
And we encourage that. Wherever the conversation goes, we're going to have a good time.
Sounds a lot like my family. You never know where the conversation is going to go.
And that's just great. And we have volunteers who are there. We're really excited this upcoming Monday. We'll have some NDSU football players come and join us.
Heads up.
And we have some football fans, especially in the men's group. So we try to bring in different guests to join us.
Cool. What I found really encouraging was everybody appears to wear name tags.
We
And
do, yeah.
Oh, hello, my name is, and so, because I'm pretty good at remembering names, but it's so easy to forget. And names are important. As you talk to somebody, as I'm talking with you, Maggie, if somebody if they have no name tag on, when people hear their name, that gives them value.
Absolutely.
And so when people say, Fred, how you doing? I saw you last week. You had a bruise on your head. How's that coming, Fred? And so having the name tags is really a simple, but yet important part of it. Yeah, cool.
It really is. And you just hit it right on as, when they talk about, the best care for someone living with dementia, they talk about person-centered care. So if you can address someone by their name, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable because they may not know who you are, but if you know, hey, you're Fred, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable in the interaction between us. But also for them, if they see someone and they have that fear of, am I going to remember their name?
Right.
They don't have to have that fear because we're going to have a name tag there and they're going to be able to address them by name.
Some people are good at that, some not. So I'm glad you have name tags. Then on Wednesdays, you've got sounds like some great music.
Yes.
Opportunities. And I know I saw Jerry listed on one of your newsletters, Jerry Barnum. I don't think you would mind my mentioning his name.
No.
We know Jerry, and he's a great individual. And then the Apollo Strings from the Morehead High School have been on there. And I brought up the Zippity Zingers. That one is kind of a great area. Well, it's somebody from outside the community. But my point is, and there's also what's called the Sing from the Heart chorus. That sounds like it's a lot of people just yelling at the top of their lungs. But tell me a little bit about some of the music and how that facilitates and helps.
Yeah. So music is really important to the brain. There's lots of benefits, whether we're living with memory loss or not, but especially for people who are living with a type of dementia and other forms of memory loss. Music is a beautiful way to engage, especially if the disease has progressed into the later parts of the disease. And so we offer a lot of different musical opportunities at Memory Cafe. One of those is on Wednesday, like you shared, we do bring in different musical groups to join us. Another opportunity is once a month on a Monday afternoon, we offer music therapy. So Deb McTaggart is a music therapist, and she'll come in and do a music therapy type session. And then we also do the Dine and Dance, which I think I forgot to mention earlier. But the Dine and Dance is a once a month program that we offer at the Morehead American Legion. And we bring in different musical groups to entertain us, and so that we can enjoy lunch at a restaurant together, and we can enjoy music, and we can dance if we want to.
And I like the time of the day, the afternoon.
Yes.
When we're younger, of course, we go dining and dancing at 9 p.m., things like that.
Yeah.
9 p.m., I got better places now at this point in my life. Yeah.
It is a nice time, and we've noticed afternoons work really well.
To me, and I'm speaking from experience, everybody knows this, but music just carries so many, it facilitates memory so easy. And you know this. I could be a playlist or just a song pops up on my radio. All of a sudden, I'm high school cruising down Main Street with my friends, listening to Jim Croce or something like that. I go like, oh wow, I remember that so clearly. Yeah. I can almost sense it, feel it. Whereas words, not so much. If you had to memorize the the Declaration of Independence, like it's. I'm trying to forget that one. No, but music has such a huge impact in that area.
It really does. It's really fun to see, especially in some of the smaller groups that we offer, the ways that music can engage individuals, but also partners on this journey. When a music or a song comes on that is just kind of close to their heart, individually or as a couple, and they can kind of have that time together. It's just really beautiful. For
a couple especially.
Yes, and especially that Dine and Dance, I think, is a really neat program because they can kind of have that sense of normalcy. Yep. And
I bet some of the couples, used to go dancing every weekend. Yeah. And now if they can get out on occasion to do it, probably not as rigorous, but they're dancing. Yeah. Having those memories.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of places to go dancing in Fargo Moorhead anymore. So Join us at Memory Cafe.
There we go. Talking about some of the support groups, or I'd like to talk about some of the support groups. We're talking about Memory Cafe, but I see there's something called Caregiver Cafe.
Yeah. Yep.
Am I reading that right?
You are. Yeah. So it is a part of Memory Cafe. It's an offset support group that's not during our Monday mornings. It's a monthly group.
Okay.
And so that's at our downtown office at this point. And it's a group for any caregiver, whether it's, a spouse caring for a spouse, it's a child caring for a parent,
okay,
whatever it may be. It's facilitated by Kristen Wenzel, who is a very experienced social worker. She actually worked many years at hospice and now is at Life Source. And she just has a really special interest for serving dementia caregivers. And so it's a very well-attended support group. You can receive a lot of wonderful support by attending that group as well.
I bet there's also a lot of interaction amongst the individuals, not just that day. I mean, it's not a place to hook up, as they say, but you will meet other caregivers in your same situation or have a lot in common that, a caregiver cafe is not going to be happening for another 2 weeks, but do you mind, just meeting me at Perkins or something? Let's just talk. So I guess it's kind of a good lead into some of those other relationships too.
Oh my goodness, yes. Okay. It is pretty neat to see the friendships that form at Memory Cafe.
Not bad.
For people, the individuals living with memory loss as well as the caregivers. We have some pretty strong bonds and friendships that have formed through Memory Cafe. Many of the caregivers did not know each other before coming to Memory Cafe, and now they do meet outside of Memory Cafe. They have texting groups where they'll kind of keep each other updated through text or phone calls.
Texting cafe. Oh no.
Texting cafe. And then, they also meet for coffee, from my understanding. They do trips to the lake together. And so I think, the friendships that form at Memory Cafe are very beautiful and unique because, unfortunately, some of their friends who have not been impacted by dementia maybe don't know how to support them on this journey.
Yep.
And family members too. And so to be able to meet some other friends who are traveling this journey with their spouses or parents or grandparents, they really understand each other in this journey. So it's
and people really just want to be heard. They don't really want to have things fixed. They just want to have it heard, and that's what you're telling me about these caregivers getting together. How about this interested me, the young onset dementia support group? That sounds kind of frightening, but
Yeah, so we have a monthly group for those who are impacted by young onset dementia. And so young onset means someone was diagnosed before the age of 65.
Okay.
And this group was started because, we knew that with this diagnosis, being diagnosed younger than age 65, that really changes the dynamics of the spousal relationship, the family dynamics, the friends.
Their children, probably in their 20s, things like that. So, yeah.
And actually younger.
Yeah.
And so the Young Onset group was started to really be able to get them together and to meet others impacted by young onset. And so, individuals that we're serving right now, they were diagnosed in their 40s, late 40s. So, kids were in high school.
Right.
And so they needed their friends and their family members to come alongside them and to support them and their family through this. And so what we really focus on is, getting them together, offering education, offering support, but also encouraging them to obtain a circle of 6. And that's a concept we learned through the book Dancing with Elephants, I believe it's called.
Okay.
And in that book, they really encourage a circle of 6, and that is creating 6 people who are going to circle around you and support you on this journey.
I see.
And so that could be friends, family members, congregation members, just people that you're close with, that they're going to learn more about this. How do we engage with the individual who's living with this memory loss? How do we support the caregiver, the main caregiver? And what are things that we can do? How can we, and continue to go out for coffee and go out for, dinner together? How can we support during medical appointments and just a great understanding to circle around and support? And so that's one thing we really emphasize in that group.
Okay. I read a book several years ago called Share the Care, and I'm possibly familiar with that, but that is sort of what you're talking about. You develop a group of friends, a network, if you want to call it that have responsibilities. But it is an unfortunate part of our society, coming up with a circle of six. For some people, could be kind of difficult.
It is.
Because
it can be. Yep.
Some people have 800 friends on Facebook and social media, but how many people could they actually call at 2 a.m. and just say, hey, I need you over here. Can't tell you why, I just need you here.
Yeah.
A lot less.
Yeah, and I would say it's even more so difficult for young onset because the spouse is probably still working.
Oh, sure.
And the individual diagnosed is probably forced to retire early.
Right.
And their friends are probably still working. And so, if spouse is still working, they're at home all day by themselves, which what we know about dementia is that lack of stimulation and that lack of socialization can really, it's just not going to be helpful in this journey. But if you don't have friends that can stop over during the day or someone to just spend time with you, it's going to be really difficult.
Could be.
So
well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
As we kind of move forward, on your website, I looked at the executive board of directors. You got like 11 to 12 people on your board of directors, and they're not your bosses, but I don't think, but you definitely, they're there because I know a few of them on that board, and I was reading some of the titles and jobs that they have, and I can see that it is a very diverse group of people. I bet they're huge in what you do. And they probably volunteer a lot at these things you put on.
We have a fantastic board of directors. I'm biased, but
of course,
no, we really do. And we do have a great diversity and experience on our board. We have, our board president is Mike Slutty, and he has significant experiences in a variety of settings. And we have our vice president is Dr. Taylor Mertz, so he's a family medicine provider, and he's personally been impacted by dementia. And so he's been significantly helpful on our team in helping us, not only support individuals that we're serving, but also professionals that are serving individuals living with dementia. We have board members that are past directors. And so for me, that's really helpful. Being new to this director role, they've been fantastic in helping really strategically plan, how can we really sustain and enhance our mission at Memory Cafe. So
then looking at some of the resources from going on the website, which is memorycaferrv.org. Make sure you put in the RRV, although it'll probably direct you there anyway, but memorycaferrv.org. You list a lot of other external resources, as I will call them. You've got some websites, books that are available there. But I also found kind of interesting that you also have links to some other websites that provide essential oils, aromatherapy, but also there was a kind of a cool store. It's alstore.com, not ALS, but alzstore.com. It's just interesting, the amount of stuff you can find on that website.
Yeah, we try to keep that pretty up to date with some really great resources that people can tap into because, knowledge is power. If we don't know about these, we're not going to benefit from them. Like the ALZ store, there's lots of different dementia-specific things that we could order on there that can benefit us on the journey. Okay. There's also programs like North Dakota Assistive to help people stay independent and safe in their homes, and we want people to know about that. There's also great literature out there if people want to learn more about this, and education is something we really want to get out there so people really feel more equipped with this diagnosis.
I found, personally, we have used to be called iPad, but of course it's North Dakota Assistive now, correct? Yeah, because iPad, what does that stand for? I'm glad they changed it to North Dakota Assistive. But we've used them for some technology for our own personal use. And so they are a great resource here locally. And you can the nice thing about that is you can just drive over there. You don't have to order something on Amazon and it comes, 2 minutes later, you can drive over there. But I also found really kind of humorous reading through humorous in a good way, some of your newsletters. There's a little section in there called Just for Laughs. I don't know who's responsible for that, but there's some.
I do.
We'll leave it at that. But there's some good kind of dad-style jokes on there. But going back to the program on Monday mornings at Bethel, that one comment really struck home for me because, my brother and I, we kind of have a slogan. I really hate to exercise. Yeah. Or do you know how much I hate to exercise? But we do.
Yeah.
But that one comment about exercise, what fits better into your schedule? 1 hour a day of exercise or being dead 24 hours a day.
Oh my goodness.
That's like, well, that's an easy one. I'd like to think 1 hour a day or every other day, something like that. But there's some good humor on there. And of course, like all newsletters, it provides the information on the programs, the people, and I think that comes out once a month.
It does, yep.
Yeah. If people want that newsletter, I'm sure they can just call and get on a mailing list of some type.
Yeah.
We're just going to kind of wind down here with a few other comments, but Memory Cafe is just a fantastic organization that I've become familiar with, and I'm great to have Maggie in here talking a little bit about it. But if you want to get in touch with Memory Cafe, is it a 9 to 5 the office, or is it just like when somebody shows up?
Yeah, I would say it's 8:30 to 4:30. Our office hours are typically Tuesdays and Thursdays. Best time to find us in the office, or just calling us to see if we're going to be in there.
That's the main thing. Yeah.
If they want to sign up for our newsletter, give us a call or send us an email at hello@memorycaferrv.org.
Okay.
And yes, that newsletter is free. It's once a month. Yeah. It's a wealth of information, from jokes like you shared, to educational topics, to personal testimonies of caregivers, of individuals who are living with memory loss that attend Memory Cafe. And so if you're impacted by this, I would encourage the newsletter, because it's going to support you whether you're attending or not.
I bet that's probably kind of the first step a lot of people take. Admitting you need help is a big step. And then taking that help, getting that help. So a newsletter is sort of a kind of foot in the door, like, okay, this might be something I might want to check into. Maybe, my spouse or my father's, he's starting to talk about our fishing trips. So the newsletter certainly would be a purpose. But the phone number for Memory Cafe is 701-404-6712. And it's really an easy location to find. Technically, the address is 1112 First Avenue North in Fargo, but the entrance is right on 12th Street, isn't it?
Yes.
Just a very easily accessible street there. And of course, the website, memorycaferrv.org. But let's just wind down and let me ask you, what do you see as far as the future of Memory Cafe? Not you personally, but hopefully I'm sure you will be. But I think on the website, or maybe it was a newsletter from several months ago, it talked about one of the goals was to get a new facility or new location. I'm not sure if that's where you are now, but chances are you might want to expand to get your own building for these exercise classes and things. But just tell me a little bit about what do you think, or what you hope and Deb hope for the future of Memory Cafe.
Yeah. So we have lots of goals
Big
and ideas and big wishes at Memory Cafe. Oh man, you should be a part of our meetings some days. And it just shows that we're really passionate about serving people living with memory loss and their caregivers. And we want to do it well. But yes, one of our big goals is to get into our own space. Our lease is ending soon at our downtown location, and it's very small. We've outgrown it, so we really don't do a whole lot out of our downtown office. And our dream is to have, and we're working really hard at hopefully finding a new space soon where we can offer all of our programs out of, including our exercise, including various groups for people to meet and be together, to offer education. We're always offering education through Monday programs, Wednesday programs at Memory Cafe. We're inviting different expert speakers to come in and talk about those. And that's for our participants. Professionals are welcome too.
Absolutely.
But a goal would be to get more professionals to come to Memory Cafe and to learn more about how can we better serve those living with memory loss.
Eliminate some stereotypes.
Yep. And so that would be some of our goals. We also hope at some point we can offer some respite care. There is a significant need in our community to have respite care services where the caregiver can bring their loved one to Memory Cafe and we can provide respite. And so we're not there yet. It's one of our goals that we would be able to do that. So I would say those are a few of our goals that I'll share.
And probably an ongoing wish would be for more volunteers.
Yes. We would not be able to do what we do without our volunteers.
Exactly.
And we have an incredible group of volunteers that support our mission.
Just the energy I see by watching a couple of videos on your website, it's like I get tired just watching them. But no, it's fascinating and it's encouraging. I know we just came through what we call Giving Hearts Day.
Yeah.
You guys were busy with that. It's a big fundraiser for many nonprofits in the area. And so, but yeah, it's encouraging to see what you do, and it having been around just 7 years, roughly. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
More people are becoming more familiar with it, and things like this and like the story Kevin did the other day are all part of expanding. But before we wind down and shut it down, anything else I'm forgetting on your notes that? Like, I wish you would have asked me this.
No.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would put a plug in for is that in June, we will have our annual conference. Each summer, we host an annual conference at Memory Cafe where we offer an opportunity for community members and professionals to come together in one conference opportunity to learn more about how can we redefine memory loss. Okay. And that's the title of our conference, is Redefining Memory Loss. And this year, on June 3rd, so save the date. We are very excited to have 2 Mayo Health professionals come and speak at our conference. One of those speakers will be Dr. Graf Radford, who's a neurologist at Mayo Health. And the other speaker will be Angela Lundy, who really oversees their dementia programs for caregivers, for people living with dementia. And the both of them actually co-author the Mayo Health Alzheimer's and other dementia Mayo Health book on Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Okay. There we go. And then we're also going to have breakout sessions. Great. And so this is a conference for people who are living with memory loss, caring for someone living with memory loss, and professionals. So we're going to be offering continuing education credits for doctors to attend, PAs, nurse practitioners, therapists, nurses, you name it. If you're in the medical field, you should be able to receive credit to attend this year.
Let me ask you a personal question, which I don't think it'll catch you off guard, but is there respite care or support for you and for Deb and the other people that volunteer? I mean, because what you do is a joy, but yet it can be very tiring and sometimes a bit kind of frustrating. But is there any type of care for you?
Yeah.
Not you just personally, but everybody that helps with Memory Cafe.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's true. It's hard to see the participants that we serve at Memory Cafe go through this journey. They become really close to us. We care deeply about the people that we serve. And that's all of us, our staff, our volunteers, board members that have attended, that have gotten close with individuals. And so we offer at Memory Cafe monthly training for our volunteers. And, staff is always accessible to really, talk through, when these changes are happening, whether it's, a move into memory care, that can be challenging with our emotions if we're not going to see someone through that, or just, seeing a significant change in someone that attends. So that's, one opportunity. I think therapy services are always beneficial to anyone as they navigate changes through this diagnosis or whatever maybe changing in your life that's difficult to navigate.
Well, just as Lieutenant Colombo says, just one more question, just one more thing. Do you find a lot of your volunteers are people that have been through it as a caregiver? Obviously not the patient, if that's the right word, but caregivers who have been through it and now are in a position where they can come back and volunteer? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say majority of our volunteers do have that background, whether it, whoever it may have been, the spouse, parent, grandparent, they have a connection to it or a professional connection. Some don't, though. And so that has been really fun for me to get to know those volunteers who have not had a connection, and they just really want to serve.
And they would have the empathy of people already. It's not something that you can train. They have to experience it. And there's nothing better than experience to make somebody qualified for that. So
yeah. Yep.
Well, Maggie, I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you here. And again, one last time, the phone number of Memory Cafe, 701-404-6712. But if you can handle the internet, you can Google it, Memory Cafe here in Fargo, and give them a call, volunteer. And thank you, Maggie, for being a guest today.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. You have been listening to More Than a Funeral, Voices of the Red River Valley. And I have been your host, Tom Pence, and I'm one of the funeral directors at Corsmo Funeral and Cremation Service here in Moorhead, Minnesota. The word service has been an intentional part of our name for over 66 years, and we pride ourselves on attention to detail and personal service. Personally, my responsibilities revolve around the advanced planning aspect of our profession, and I enjoy visiting with people as we discuss the many possibilities of a memorable celebration service that will eventually honor a life according to their wishes. And from a practical standpoint, which is getting so very important these days, I help families plan ahead so that the family left behind will not be burdened with a large financial responsibility, therefore allowing them to spend time with their family, remembering their loved one, not having to worry about how to handle the expenses. Asset protection is also a very real issue these days, as many care facilities can cost several $1,000s a month, depending upon the level of care. Corsmo can provide simple and effective ways of protecting those assets, and I welcome the opportunity to visit with you about that. If you enjoyed this podcast and found some value in it, we greatly appreciate your sharing with a friend. And if you have a moment, text somebody right now. Encourage them to give a listen and perhaps follow the podcast personally. We anticipate publishing a new episode on the first day of each month, so check back for interesting guests and topics. And of course, we also welcome your suggestions for future guests and topics of interest as well. So thank you for listening. And if you want more information and actually want some free estimates or just have questions, contact any of the directors at Corsmo Funeral and Cremation Service. Our phone number is 218-233-1533, and our web address is corsmofuneralservice.com. Thanks again for listening, and from all of us at Corsmo, have a great day.